Always remember Rishi Sunak was brought in to right the Conservative ship. That after the absolute disastrous Boris Johnson and, well, the even more catastrophic Liz Truss, he was the one who was going to right everything. He would be one who would be setting sail once again and charting a new course. Meanwhile, of course, what it really looks like on this ship is that Sunak is fighting off a complete and absolute utter mutiny, with people already posturing at his own party conference for the future of the leadership and the future direction of the Tory party. And it is plainly obvious that they are going to go, after their loss, into a very right popularist message. We can already see the signs. They're there. They are more than enough there. Even I agree with, for once, on Owen Jones about this, that Nigel Farage is laying siege to the future Conservative Party in an attempt to try and really break in. The fact that he was there, the fact that you had Tories openly saying, yeah, sure, we'd allow Nigel Farage in again, dictates everything you can say about the future of the Conservative Party. And I'll tell you this now, for someone who was meant to come in and bring order, well, all he looks like at the moment, Rishi Sunak, is a supply teacher that is trying to manage an unruly classroom because all the kids are misbehaving and they know that they can get away with it because, well, he's just a supply teacher. There's very little Sunak can do about it. And some people are saying, especially from the Labour quarters, that they're now looking at a potential May election. So let's have a look at what the view has been from the Conservative points of things, because that has been the mainstream view, shall we say. Everyone else has looked at this and gone, wow, that conference was an absolute mess, a masterclass in not only with the HS2 announcement being overshadowing absolutely everything, but the disaster after disaster just in 3 days with nothing good happening, no real good announcements, and Rishi being the guy for change. Well, Labour are rubbing their hands with glee because you've got to remember, you've had 13 years of, quote, Tory change, from David Cameron promising the same thing to Theresa May, to Boris Johnson, to Liz Truss, all promising change, but delivering none of that change. Why is Rishi Sunak going to be any different? Why should voters believe Sunak now when a lot of them put their faith in Boris Johnson to be able to deliver that change? It's really not a good look. And to be honest, we're going to have a look at this bubble that the Conservatives have kindly constructed themselves, of someone who is actually realizing, yeah, this isn't really good. And, you know, maybe it's time we go into opposition, which I think, considering that this is coming from Conservative Home, one of the big headline sponsors of that conference, yeah, even they know they've lost the next general election. So we're going to go have a look into this. But yeah, it's fascinating to say the least. So, as always, thank you very much for joining us. As always, like I say, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there's the Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button. And of course, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So let's go on over into here on Conservative Home. Emily Carver wrote this. And this is what she had to say. Perhaps it's time for the Tories to go into opposition. And bear in mind, a couple of days before the conference had even started, Conservative Home, like their main writer, wrote a piece saying, do the Conservatives even want to win? The party that, you know, I am a part of and I write blogs about to support them, I have to ask the serious question, do they seriously want to win? And it just goes to show you the disaster, really, the past couple of days this has been, the absolute catastrophe this conference for the Tories has been. But anyway, let's see what we'll get into. So let's see what she has to say. So this year's Conservative conference was a frustrating affair. Oh, yeah. Starting off strong. Speaking to numerous members, grassroots activists, and Tory MPs, there was little in the way of enthusiasm for the party's record, nor for the prospects at the next election. Indeed, the overwhelming impression was of a Conservative Party in the midst of an identity crisis. And that is right. That's what many other people have been saying as well. But they've been in this identity crisis really since Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson brought in this new supposed economic conservative populism where they were going to invest in all these things. And then you've now got these red wall Tory MPs that want all this, but the rest of the party doesn't want any of that at all. I mean, I'll tell you now, I am waiting to see what the red wall MPs do in the coming weeks, because oh boy, they launched their own manifesto saying how brilliant HS2 was, how much it was going to be needed for the North, as a much needed investment opportunity for the North. That's now gone. It is a little more than a shuttle service now from London to Birmingham. It does nothing. Doesn't even really give the benefits that it would promise. It's honestly, it's been an absolute disaster on this. And like I say, go watch Gareth Dennis his channel, because like I say, we've talked to him before in the past. I'm gonna have to go talk to him again, to be honest. Certainly in the light of this, and have another chat with him. I know I've said to Graham, get him on because he'll be good to have a chat with. But yes, anyway, we're going to continue with this. So Rishi Sunak's keynote speech gave little for members to get overly excited or feel pride about. Absolutely not. I mean, the picture from that conference was Michael Gove, face like thunder, doing this slow golf clap when he was being told to clap. After days of chaotic messaging and receiving confirmation that HS2 had been officially derailed, the northern leg will be scrapped, and the money, quote, saved will be spent on hundreds of new transport projects in the North and the Midlands. Well, what are these new transport projects? What are these new things? Well, we know we're not going to get them. We've done this song and dance before. HS2 was actually the closest the North has actually come to getting new transport links. Desperately needed new transport links, and they've even backed out of that to have new transport projects. Well, we don't even know what those transport projects are yet. Even if that money that is saved is going to go into those transport projects, I highly suspect it will just be maybe quietly swept under the rug with just a couple of meager announcements spent on stuff, but it won't amount to anything really good. Many Conservatives, they continue with, have long thought that the case for this infrastructure was weak. And with ballooning costs and constant delays, the change in direction seems sensible and pragmatic, if not rather an embarrassing admission of defeat. Yeah, sensible and pragmatic, it was not. These costs were not a surprise. They knew the costs were about this. The most expensive part of this project was building it between London and Birmingham. After that, building up to Manchester was the easy part. And as we said before, building it is just a one-off cost. It is a one-off cost. And then after that, HS2 would have paid for itself every single year in the economic benefits that it would bring. Anyway, it continues. David Cameron's negative reaction to the decision serves to highlight how the party is in some ways at war with itself, accusing Sunak of throwing away 15 years of cross-party consensus and acting against Britain's long-term national interests. Oof. And I'll tell you now, when an ex-leader like Cameron comes out and says that, yeah, that's a pretty strong condemnation of Sunak. Like, for years we've had consensus on this, and only really in the past 6 months or so has HS2 become, oh, it's too expensive. It's too expensive. Why is it costing so much? What's going on? If you are familiar with the Sheffield Supertram and the ambitious plans that Sheffield Supertram was originally going to have, this is exactly what happened to Sheffield Supertram. The costs started ballooning, started getting all really expensive. Everyone was going, oh, it's too expensive. It's too expensive. We can't do all this. Supertram again pays for itself, and they are only now trying to talk about, well, maybe we should re-extend Supertram and do all those ambitious parts of it that we were originally going to do. But yeah, it's wildly the same thing. But yeah, yeah. Anyway, back to it. While the announcement was probably a necessary one, no, it wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. 100% was absolutely not a necessary one. He made the more bizarre decision to follow in Jacinda Ardern's authoritarian footsteps and confirm his plans to ban smoking for the younger generation by incrementally rising the age at which people can buy cigarettes. Good, I suppose, in a way. Glad he's at least following Jacinda Ardern on something. But it was hardly authoritarian to say maybe we should stop people from smoking because it has very bad health outcomes for them, and ultimately cost the NHS a lot of money for those bad health outcomes. Maybe we should do something about that. Anyway, while the British people do tend to like banning things for other people, to many, the small state conservatives, this feels absurdly liberal, at the same time as being frankly unworkable and largely unneeded. Very few teenagers now actually smoke. I'm not sure actually what the numbers are on that. I'd be very interested to know what the numbers are. But it continues. Time will obviously tell whether this policy will get through Parliament, and this is it. This is how ridiculous this policy is. Rishi Sunak has said this is going to be a free vote. Like that whole thing, it's going to be a free vote. Anyone can vote how they want. If it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. What an absolute nonsense way to sort of push forward a policy like that. It's ridiculous. Obviously, with both chambers packed full of paternalists, I imagine that it will. For what's sure is that whether you agree with it or not, the move, it is hardly a groundbreaking type of policy to inspire party members or the nation to vote Conservative. And that's it. His three big announcements were not. That was it. Oh, you're going to change A levels? Well, okay. That's pretty neutral. Honestly, I think lots of people on the left say that A levels need changing as well and sort of looking at. So that's incredibly neutral. The smoking thing, okay. It will probably go down the same way that banning smoking in pubs did. If you remember when that whole furore did that, when Labour did that, when they came into power. And then, of course, banning HS2. That is anything that the crowning achievement of failure for Rishi Sunak, that you had this really big, good, ambitious project which would deliver huge benefits. And yet, no, we're going to cancel it. It's the crowning achievement of failure. It really is. Again, I'm still really shocked by the fact that it's got cancelled, because it was something up here in the north that was very, very much being looked forward to, of all the economic benefits and what it would bring to even local train services as well, because as we always said, those fast trains would go onto the HS2 track, which would then free up capacity on our normal tracks. Not going to happen anymore now. Um, sorry. To Conservatives. So the other highlights obviously include the plan to scrap A levels in favor of a new and broader, quote, advanced British standard qualification. His reiteration that, quote, a man is a man and a woman is a woman, doubling down on the health secretary's intervention on single sex hospital wards. This insistence that he will make good on his promise to stop the boats, all, quote, reasonable, hardly inspiring after 13 years of Conservative government. Here's the thing, it's just, well, I've said I'm not good on this, and I will admit I'm not good on it. There are other channels that are far, far, far better than I am at covering this, but my stance has always been they're not hurting anyone. The right say, oh no, but this happened, this happened. Congratulations, you've got this really small, isolated case. But other than that, they're not hurting anyone. Just let them get on with their lives. It's insane that you've just heard this person talking about how small state conservatives would consider that completely illiberal because you're getting involved in people's lives. Well, who are you to say and deliver judgment on someone else's lives? Just just get on with it. It literally does not affect 90% or probably more of the population. Just let them live. They're not bothering anyone. They're not hurting anyone. We went through the exact same thing when the whole gay marriage thing was happening as well, when all the sort of the gay stuff in the night, the gay stuff in the 90s that went on as well. Very, very similar. This whole culture war argument against it seems to be leading, if anything, to more bad and bizarre policies that they aren't formulating into policies. It's just one of those things. I know. I said at the beginning, it's not my wheelhouse. There are better people who cover this than me. But yeah, just let them live. Let them do what they want to do. They're not hurting anyone. Let them have all the stuff that they need. They're not hurting anyone. It's really not. It's really not this big issue that conservatives have literally made a mountain out of a molehill, demonizing these people. And you can always say that I'm always against demonizing any group of people, and that's unfortunately what's happened to this particular community because of this imported culture war from America. Anyway, let's continue. So, of course, the elephant in the room is that unless anything significant changes, and that is unlikely, that the Prime Minister will be able to see through any of these plans. And he's probably not going to be able to. True, there have been a couple of polls showing that Labour's lead was waning. One recent opinion poll showed that Labour's lead had narrowed to just 10 points following his net zero announcements, but this soon appeared to be an anomaly, with the latest poll from Delta Poll showing Labour's lead increasingly up to 21 points. And that was always a weird poll, how it's like, yeah, net zero. And now we've narrowed to within 10 points. That was a really weird poll. And that, to be honest, shows me that it really was a complete anomaly on that. But standing out from the crowd was, unfortunately, for the Prime Minister, Nigel Farage, who quickly became one of the biggest draws and talking points of the entire conference. See what I said about who's, Nigel Farage laying siege to the party. Party members descended en masse for selfies, and GB News ensured that one of the biggest questions of the day to Tory MPs was, would you have Nigel Farage back in the party? To which the answer from several Tory MPs was an enthusiastic yes. Of course, Farage is a massive figure of the right and has a celebrity status. But The reception he received must highlight how large swathes of the party membership are frustrated by what they see as the parliamentary party's failure to act within keeping their own conservative values. They're not. They've been fighting amongst themselves about which values and what ideology they need to take. Um, and it has been, as a lot of people have said, since 2016, that UKIP infiltration that has allowed a lot of those Tory MPs have said, oh, yeah, sure, we'd allow Nigel Farage back in the party to join UKIP. Because where did all that UKIP vote go? Well, it went back to the Conservatives. And this, Nigel Farage being at that conference, that's only going to drive that party home. If anything, this has probably dented the Reform Party's chances at a potential future election, because that could split their vote between them and the Conservatives. But we'll see what happens at the general election. Take, for example, the very thorny issue of immigration. Party members want immigration down, and the Conservatives insist that they are the party of border control and limited skilled immigration. Yet they presided over the highest levels of both illegal and legal immigration on record. Again, who cares? Fund the system, create safe routes, that gets rid of the small boats, you fund the system, congratulations, they're now British citizens. They're contributing to society by paying taxes for an increasingly aging population. Again, this whole idea that immigration is this bad thing is just completely idiotic on so many levels, and it comes down to basic racism, unfortunately. Owen Jones was interviewing this young conservative, and he was making the quote culture argument that these quote Muslims weren't exemplifying British values, that multiculturalism had indeed failed. And to be honest, you could tell he was a Sargon of Akkad fan, because he was parroting the exact same things. And the quote, it's the culture that you see these right-wing nutcases now like to talk about. It's the culture. Who cares? Culture always changes. It's not a monolith. It never stays the same. It always continues. It always moves, morphs, and changes. That's what culture is. It accepts new things all the time and is constantly moving and changing. It's people like the right who can't understand that and not get with it. But yeah, anyway, I'm already going massively off topic on this. Another question asked is how the Conservative government that pledges the importance of allowing people to keep more of their own money to continue to maintain the highest tax burden in generations. As judged by Liz Truss's receptions, they might feel wrongly or rightly that the current leadership has it completely wrong on this. And that was the other thing, the fact that you had Liz Truss completely upstage Jeremy Hunt's own announcements and the speech he was giving in, while he was giving it to a barely packed hall. Liz Truss, they were queuing out the door to try and get in to listen to her. And yet, she's not going to go for the leadership. No, absolutely. She's going to have another crack at the leadership. I can guarantee you. And then, of course, there were younger members frustrated with the apparent inaction on housing. How can the Prime Minister, whose wife described him as embodying the world's word of aspiration, fail to even mention helping younger generations get onto the housing ladder in his keynote speech to the conference? Because they aren't interested. We've been saying this for years. The housing crisis is the Conservatives' problem. They helped create it, and we have not just gone into a housing crisis. We have sleepwalked into a housing disaster. And there's only one way to get out of it, and that's to build more houses, but also really to tackle landlords. And they daren't do either. Because if they build more houses, then people will complain that they're building more houses. or that it's lowering their property values because you've increased the amount of stock that's on the housing market, thus lowering their own housing prices. Or when they do build these houses, it's not the right houses that people need. We need social housing. We need sort of the lower end of the housing. We need like, two to three bedroom houses. That's what we sort of need, but it's not. It's the 4-5 bedroom houses that developers would rather build, and they've done nothing about that consistently. They've done nothing about that. So why are these young conservatives surprised about that? It's been their own party that has been screwing them for so long. Then, of course, there's the small issue of green policies. Speaking to members, there is little confidence in the government's pursuit of net zero targets, though there was some support for the Prime Minister's dilution of some of the more burdensome regulations, as well as the frustration from green-minded among the party. And that is true. That has now split the party fundamentally again. So instead of bringing the party together, as Rishi Sunak has said, he's now created a new split. Are you a Green Tory? Are you a non-Green Tory? This is yet another split in the party it cannot afford. So, more fundamentally, Rishi Sunak, as a leader, is seen by many as an undemocratic imposition that ignored the members' wishes, made worse by the Lord Carudda's quite astonishing and unhelpful call on donors to defund the party. Oh, please, 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 Caruddas, please keep on calling for that. That would be fantastic. Because remember, this is the guy who said that, oh, there's so many Conservative MPs who aren't true Conservatives, so we need to get rid of them. Oh, please do. Please, please do. That would be fantastic. Just continue calling for that, Caruddas. What's quite clear is that the Prime Minister lacks the support he needs from the party faithful, which without, it will be difficult to close the gap between the Conservatives and Labour. It's not just the fact that you'll get the party faithful on the side. It's you need the public on side as well at a general election. You have neither of those, shockingly, because of your own internal strife that has played out quite obviously through the week. And it wouldn't surprise me if we get more stories about some of the obvious splits that happened during the week. Wouldn't shock me. So the party needs to decide who it wants to appeal to, and they need to do it now. Well, they've decided that Rishi Sunak's going to be the bringer of change. The change of what? Currently, there is a sense that the party is resigned to defeat, which lends itself to the even more infighting and factionalism, with the bigger hitters, including Liz Truss and Priti Patel, quite obviously setting out where they believe the party should be. And this comes back to my comment at the beginning that Sunak is more like a supply teacher than an actual, full teacher. You've got all the kids messing with the supply teachers. We've all been there in the class. We all know what happens when a supply teacher steps into the room. It's an excuse to be lazy, to mess up. Every single school child knows that in the land. When the supply teacher steps in, excellent, hooray! And this is exactly what has happened to his own party. They're all playing, they're all messing about, and yeah, you've got honestly the potential next leaders, Priti Patel, Liz Truss, as mentioned there. Kimmy Badenoch, certainly going to throw her hat in the ring. Suella Braverman, that's 4. And the 5th one, I think, is going to be Liz Truss. That's what I think it's going to come down to. I think the next leadership contest, and oh boy, that'll be interesting. To those watching from the outside, there's a gaping lack of coherence. And an absence of a long-term vision to sell the country, despite the Prime Minister standing behind a lectern saying that there is one, and the sense that the party has all but given up on winning. This attitude is rather self-defeating, and considering that Keir Starmer has little more to offer than not being a Tory, perhaps at this stage a loss is what the party needs. And once again, I'd like to point that out. Um, he has little more to offer than not being a Tory, and yet what do we hear constantly from people on the left? This conference, I think, will go down in history as the worst decision ever. I just think it just goes to show you Sunak should have just had a general election. You should have had a general election all those years ago, just got over it and just done it. But he didn't, and he foolishly limped on. He should have had an election the second he got elected. Although I think he knew he would have lost, but at least he might have maintained control of the party. And I often say one of the big threats that Sunak could have leveled against all these factions is say, look, our number one priority is to fix everything. We've got to right this mess. And I cannot afford you guys messing up, infighting, and plotting betrayals against me. So I will give you this warning now. Mess up, any of you, and there will be a general election. And if anything, a lot of people of what Labour viewers, like coming from MPs and other people within the party, have been saying, there's going to be a May general election. Everything at the moment points to a May potential general election. So we'll see what happens, but quite frankly, the sooner the better. The sooner the better. So yeah, we need to get them completely out of this. Absolutely. But as always, thank you very much, of course, for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.